A couple of days ago, I made a video about this 3D printed shroud thing coupled with this AC infinity fan off of Amazon. The main purpose of this whole setup was supposed to be noise suppression, and it works great for that. This one is running right now, right in front of me. The fact that I can capture somewhat okay audio in these conditions is kind of absurd, actually. After messing with this setup for the last couple of days, it stopped being about noise for me. I mean, this is a warehouse. I don't care how noisy it is. It turns out, in addition to being much quieter than the stock fans on the S19, this thing can push a lot more air, and that allows for overclocking. Oddly, the specs online seem to vary quite a bit, but these stock fans for an S19 push somewhere between 185 and 250 CFM at max speed. Either the internet just can't agree on the real numbers, or more likely the manufacturers have just been switching models over the months that this thing has been in production. You have 2 fans on the intake and 2 fans on the exhaust of an S19, which means this thing runs with somewhere between 370 and 500 CFM with technically neutral pressure on paper. In reality, not really, but none of that matters at all. This fan can produce over 800 CFM at max speed, which means that it's sending somewhere between 160% and double the volume of air through the machine. More air means more cooling, and cooling is the main reason you can't safely overclock your miners in the air, which is the reason I started experimenting with immersion cooling in the first place. So with everything stock and in this warehouse, which, let's be clear for our viewers who might be in the medium future or live anywhere other than Florida, I have this little probe here set up, and it is 99 degrees in the warehouse. I'm starting to sweat pretty bad. It's really hot in here. Like, these are the worst conditions to run your miner. Even worse conditions to try to overclock in air cooling, obviously. Really hot, uncomfortably hot. Kinda wanna be somewhere else. I can't cool the warehouse, it's too big. You can overclock your stock air-cooled S19 J Pros in the wintertime in Wisconsin, sure. But when it's 95 degrees outside every day here in the bath salt motherland, these will really quickly hit their limit and shut themselves down. Where was I? Australia. Yes, Australia. My stock S19J running stock fans, obviously in the same spot in the warehouse, has an intake temperature of 68 and an outlet temperature of 76 Celsius. What those numbers actually mean are just the chips at the beginning of the hashboard versus the chips at the end of the hashboard. Obviously, the air is heating up as it moves through this fire swamp. And that's 2 Princess Bride references in one scene. F***ing nailed it. I personally get a little uneasy as temperatures creep towards 80 degrees Celsius inside this machine at any point. And even the slightest overclock would push this thing there pretty much right away. However, right next to this stock S19 J Pro, I have a modified S19 J Pro. Fans removed, bigger, more powerful inline duct fan fitted with a 3D printed shroud, still in the stock firmware. Same ambient temperatures, but I'm gonna crank this fan up because we're not going after quietness, we're going after coolness now. And this fan can just push a lot more air. Well, let's take a look. Inlet temp's at 57 degrees, and the hot side is still in the 60s. It's beautiful. That's 8 degrees cooler. 8 degrees that I can now leverage into more Bitcoin. So let's start this thing back up with a custom firmware. I'm using the asic.to firmware, but you're free to use whatever firmware makes you feel nice, because asic.to is no longer paying me anything. Feel free to reach out, Mark. You too, Christian C, if you guys are done with the BeagleBone version. I am firmware neutral. While this thing fires up, I also got this special controller thing for this fan. It's got a little temperature probe which you can put on the out, and you can tell this thing to speed the fan up or slow it down based on the temperature that the probe senses. So if you are searching for that most quiet combination to run your S19s at home, this thing can do an even better job, I guess, because, I don't know, during the day when it's hot, it'll run a little faster, be a little louder, and at night when it's cooler outside, or if you live in a cooler place, this fan can automatically turn itself down and it gets way quieter. I'll put a link to this controller in the description if you want to mess with it. It's like 40 bucks, I think. And it just plugs in. This fan is already made for it. It just plugs right into it. Rip it right up to 125 terahash. Ooh. I don't know if you can hear that, but it's thundering outside. I'm gonna let this run, and then I'm gonna let it run for a while, and I'm gonna turn up this fan a little bit. But I'm gonna let this run so the temperature really gets like normalized. It sort of takes a while for this overclocking firmware to really go to full speed. So I wanna make sure it's like hashing at 125 terahash before I come back and check the temperatures. Okay, so this has been running for about 20 minutes now. A really dirty camera lens. So we're running at 121 terahash, actually currently running on 127 terahash with only 72 degrees Celsius on the hot side. And again, this is my little probe. It is 96 degrees Fahrenheit in the warehouse. My wife is FaceTiming me.
Delivery like 75 minutes.
Do carry out, I'll just drive straight there from here. We're ordering pizzas. So in the most unideal conditions, we're at 96 degrees Fahrenheit in this room, this ambient temperature room. It's hot as hell. I wouldn't even normally run Bitcoin miners in this kind of temperature, but with this big oversized fan, not only can I run this thing, but I can overclock this thing to 121 terahash and still have cooler temperatures than my stock one was running in its stock conditions. This is bonkers. This thing is at least my future for Bitcoin mining at the warehouse. Most of my miners run in Texas at the Musk Miners remote hosting facility. Speaking of Musk Miners, I've said this the last 3 videos. Thank you to Musk Miners for providing me with this test miner, this S19 J Pro 104 Terahash. Musk Miners is my trusted source for Bitcoin mining hardware. They are American based. They're super good at customer support. They will get back to you if you have any questions. They can get you replacement parts. They can ship you things like in a week. And they're great, they're amazing. All the prices are coming way down. I was gonna talk a lot about that. Actually, I'm gonna go back over to my studio, wrap this thing up. It's hot and I'm uncomfortable, and Sarah just ordered mini Pizza Hut pizzas for us to eat and watch Big Brother. Really, the only thing you need to get this setup going is one of these 8-inch ducted fans, and then some sort of 3D printed shroud that gets you from the 8-inch fan to the back of an S19. That Fruits and Associates company makes one, and the Crypto Cloaks guys make one as well. And I'm gonna see if I can get them to print an even bigger 10-inch version of this shroud, because the 8-inch fan is a lot quieter than the 6-inch fan, so it stands to reason that a 10-inch fan will be quieter still. And I'd like to see some sort of port where I can connect the big 10-inch fan on the air intake side, and it'll cool not only the miner, but the power supply too, so you can take those 3 fans out also, because they make a bit of noise themselves. Links to all these things and how to talk to Musk miners if you want to buy ASIC equipment down below. Right now seems like a really bad time to buy into Bitcoin mining, but maybe not. These machines are literally down to a quarter of what I paid for my first one. You couldn't see it in that shot, but I had a second AC Infinity fan blowing directly into the guts of the power supply of this S19 with all of those fans removed. For that first shot, I also had the machine underclocked to 85 terahash, and the fan running at 40% just to hammer home the noiselessness of this rabbit hole I'm currently falling down right now. And I'm not done.